going through my own stuff, it's like, okay, what's the lesson here? I believe that we're here to evolve, that our soul is here to evolve. Our soul is the eternal part of ourselves. It is connected to whatever's greater than us. And we are here to evolve, right? We're not here to play the victim. We're here to learn what we're here to learn. And then essentially, we're here to help others do it too, right? I believe that what we go through also impacts the collective, our own collective, and also our greater collective. Again, I use myself, I guess, as a research project because it's like, okay, I'm going through the hardest period. What's the lesson here? What do I need to learn? What's my inner child saying? What are these parts of my psyche that are essentially frozen in time? What are these points of trauma that are frozen in time that are affecting me in the present and also affecting my child, affecting my family, my friends, my everyone in my sphere? How can I be the best version of myself? What can I learn about myself while going through this so that I can overcome this?
Welcome to The Cultured Therapist, a podcast for the curious and the bold to come together and discuss topics, interests, and experiences of the mental healthcare field. I'm your host, R.C. Winters, a licensed professional counselor in the state of Louisiana, and I work in the field in private practice. Each episode, I interview a helper from a specific region of the United States that is providing care for others through this work. And we take the time to get to know them and the topics they feel therapists, clients, and the public at large might benefit from hearing more about. With so many topics to choose from, there is bound to be something here for everyone. Today, I introduce you to Alix Lee, a multifaceted healer, life coach, and spiritual mentor whose work is dedicated to addressing trauma on every level. With training and certifications as a life coach, holistic health coach, energy healer, yoga teacher, breathwork facilitator, Kundalini activation practitioner, retreat host, and spiritual mentor, Alix brings an integrative approach to healing that bridges science, spirituality, and somatic wisdom. In 2023, Alix joined the team at Fort Freedom, a nonprofit organization serving combat veterans with PTSD, addiction, and suicidal ideation. Working alongside holistic health practitioners, therapists, and trainers, Alix provides spiritual coaching and trauma-informed healing to veterans navigating some of life's deepest wounds. This work has further shaped her unique perspective on trauma, combining modern therapeutic approaches with ancient energetic practices to create lasting transformation. Alix's approach to holistic trauma care is grounded in the belief that the body remembers what the mind forgets, and that healing requires engaging with all aspects of the human experience: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Alix expresses her mission is to empower others to release the weight of their past, restore harmony to the mind, body, and spirit, and reclaim the wholeness that has always been theirs. I had the privilege of getting to know Alix only recently on a hike together out at the Wesley Center in Alexandria. Our conversation went from her astrological sign, which we both share, to her excitement about all things out there and cutting edge and healing, as well as ancient and esoteric. Things I connect with so deeply, immediately I knew I had found a kindred spirit. As I review back this episode, really it is very different from the previous ones before it, detailing beliefs, spiritual and metaphysical concepts, philosophical and scientific ideas around energy, mental health, and healing. This episode meanders all over. By the time we were talking about the Jungian concept of the wounded healer and synchronicity, I became aware of how much fun I was having just riffing on all of these concepts, and how enjoyable it was to apply them to modalities of therapy. Still, I made sure to supply any pieces of helpful corroboration to these concepts in the information section of today's episode, just in case you wish to read more. Finally, I do want to note that even if Alix's background and connection to healing is through spirit, she does a great job of answering to, if that is not your thing, well then what? She details her journey to this point from COVID, to now when this recording is being made in 2025, and the unbelievable journey that 5 years can make for a person who wakes up to a calling all their own. So cozy up in your favorite chair with a familiar blanket, grab that warm mug of hot tea or other gentle beverage, and we will join in that spiritual journey with Alix. Let's jump in.
Pre-COVID, I was married, mom, but fully just in the role of everything, right? Really didn't have a lot of support. Business owner, totally burned out. When COVID hit, I hadn't been outside in probably 20 years. And I just had this calling to go outside. So I started going outside. I started getting in the mud and the earth, started planting. And I learned something that when you deadhead a plant, when you take off the dead leaves, it helps the energy move through the plant. And that moment, while it seems like something so tiny, it was just like almost this awakening, right? Learning what energy is, learning how we direct energy. At that time, I was in marketing and I was in a mastermind group and I was mentoring under this man, Wyatt Woodsmall. And he actually trained Tony Robbins, but he doesn't have a big name in the industry, but he's like Obi-Wan Kenobi. And everybody was dealing with their things in COVID. And we were in the virtual session. And he said, I was, talking about what I was going through. And he was like, you need to look into your chakras. And I was like, what? And he's like, chakras. And so I wrote it down like SHOCKRAH, or, like totally butchered the word, had never heard of it. And those two instances, right, when I looked up chakras, it had just happened. We were speaking of synchronicities offline earlier, but it was the synchronicity of I had just learned that about the plant redirecting the energy. And then I learned about the chakra system. And when I read that, it was just like my whole life changed. This great explosion, this great awakening, essentially. I was burnt out. I was depressed. I had no life force energy coming into the body. I was pouring out, pouring out, pouring out, and never pouring in. And that it, it was a treacherous journey, but in hindsight, it was the most beautiful journey to come alive again. I hadn't felt that alive since I was little, since I was in my grandma's garden with the plants, right? So that was a very pivotal moment on my path. It spiraled me into a really huge depression. And I had just recently learned, a client shared with me the quote from Jim Carrey, and I'm not going to say it verbatim, but where he said depression, if you look at the word, it really means deep rest. That the body needs deep rest from the weight of the character that you are forcing yourself to play, right? This in authenticity that we're holding. When we begin to awaken, we have to almost go into that cocoon phase, which is tight, it's dark, it's painful, but it is a rebirth of sorts. It's a death before a rebirth.
When you think about your own rebirth cycle that you went through, do you consider it now something that guides the work you do?
Oh, absolutely. I would say that I am in a perpetual death and rebirth cycle, right? And so when I started when I started my spiritual journey and I read about like, oh, the cocoon phase and rebirth and this and that, I thought it was just going to be once. But it's almost like this perpetual, because energy is in everything and it's constantly moving, right? And so the waves of ascension are expansion and contraction.
Mm,
And it is those months where we are in expansion, where we're feeling closer to our higher self, right? We feel so alive. We feel better than we ever have before. It's almost like a gift from the universe, a gift from the Great Spirit. Like, here, feel this, taste this. And in order to make that your new threshold, then you have to kind of go down again and purge some of these things that are no longer serving you, right? They're weighing you down from reaching this peak. And so you have to go down and feel all of that and purge. But it's hard because you have to feel all of it in order to process it. You have to l release the energy from the body so that you can get back up, but then you go higher.
I think most people don't realize either that that blockage is there and have not experienced that feeling you're talking about, that feeling of being in your grandmother's garden, that feeling of how would you describe that feeling?
Mm. It's only a feeling that I can describe in hindsight, right? I didn't realize it at that time. It was a feeling of just light. It was a feeling of freedom. My grandma had a really beautiful garden in New Orleans, in a very small backyard, she poured a lot of her love into it, and it was very her love was there, right? And so it felt like love. It felt like peace. I could go back there and just kind of lose myself. It was almost like the secret garden to me. That's what I felt like as a child. This spark of life and like imagination and self.
Yeah. I often equate it to sort of the warmth of being wrapped up when you're not feeling well. That cozy feeling you get that's sort of like all is right with the world. There's no place else I need to be. There's no one else I need to be. There's nothing else I need to be doing but what
Mhm.
I'm doing right now. That sort of feeling.
Safety.
Maybe that's it. Yeah. What's your work like when it comes to trauma? What is it that you do related
Mhm.
to that?
Okay, awesome. This is my favorite topic. So everything is energy, right? Every thought
Right.
that we have, and we are essentially energetic beings. We are energetic beings having a human experience. And our energy field extends 5 to 10 feet past our body. Science has proven this. This is no longer just esoteric, right? And when we come into contact with the energy fields of other things, people, places, times, memories, etc., that energy is essentially it sticks there. So if you and I come into fields, right? Our fields merge, and then when we leave those fields, it's almost like a sticky residue that stays between our fields, right? So now what that residue is, so think of like a web almost. We're all in our fields, but there's this web of energy between all of us. And that web, the strings that now connect our fields when we come into contact are cords. Those are energetic cords. Those cords can be stuck to people, places, periods of our life. It's not logical, right? We can't fully define it. It's the possibilities are endless. But from a trauma perspective, what happens, our energy field is our nervous system. Our nervous system is our spine, it's all of our capillaries, it's our hair, and it is our energy field. So when you walk into a room and you just feel something's off, that's your energy field speaking through the nervous system and communicating with the body. We hear we are mind, body, and spirit, right? But we say that mind, body, and spirit. We say it as one, but essentially it's three different parts that are all working in unison together. And so what happens in a moment of trauma, right? And that trauma it can be something insignificant to someone else, but highly impactful to others. It can be a moment, it can be a season of life, it can be a childhood, right? In that moment, of something happening and that nervous system is activated. We know this from science, right? And the nervous system goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. From an energetic perspective, that moment of impact, whatever that moment is frozen in the field and in the nervous system, right? So we can talk about things, we can logicize things, we can really try to work everything out from the mind perspective. But that moment in time is frozen in the body. And so at any moment, that activation, it's almost like lightning strikes, right? So there's that moment of impact with trauma, lightning strikes in your energetic field. Think of it as just, those balls of energy that they used to have at like Spencer's, right? Back in the day, it's the glass ball with
Mhm. Oh,
any
yes. Yeah, I
and
love those.
you could touch your finger and the electricity goes. So think of that, right? Our body is in the center of that ball, and our field is the glass. And if you were to put your hands on both sides of that glass, you would see that the energy kind of going through the whole ball. That's a good analogy, a good visual for a moment of impact, right? You slap your hands against that ball and the electricity kind of comes out. That moment from an energetic perspective is frozen in time, that exact moment, that charge is always there, right? In living in the body. So when your nervous system picks up something, and your nervous system as your energy field walks into something, maybe there's a trigger, maybe there's a sound, maybe there's a smell, and there's things that we can't even define that trigger it. That moment of impact is almost activated instantly, bringing you back into that frozen piece of time. Does this all make sense? Do you have any questions?
It does. All of my background in it is neurobiological. So they talk about it like the hippocampus is the part of the brain that puts a timestamp on memories, and when you have trauma, there's no stamp because in that moment the memory part of the brain doesn't say, hey, this is when this is happening. So their reasoning is that the brain pulls it up because there's no timestamp. So how can it ever know it's not happening currently if it doesn't have an understanding of time? What you're saying, if I understand correctly, is that it goes deeper than that, that there's actually an imprint of the moment of energetic impact that is held in the body at an energy level, which means cellularly there is like almost a mitochondrial level of response.
Exactly, exactly. And it's from within the body at a cellular level, through the entire body, through the entire field.
Mm, that is wild to think about because I was recently reading that genes or genetics, they found that they have fractal like shapes that are similar to the antennas in our phones, the fractal antennas that are in our cell phones. So, actually, genetically, we are wired in an electromagnetic way in our gene level, which is really wild because that means our systems are built to absorb energy impactfully.
But we are with this energy, right? This mitochondrial thing, this activation, right? We know that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but what's powering it? We are light. We are light beings. We are energetic beings.
So, one of the things I'm also hearing is that your work with energy and your background of energy work comes into a practical usage. You use it for work with others. What are some of the ways that you tend to embody this important paradigm and understanding of the reality of nature through this energetic lens?
Yeah. So I went on a deep dive with it through just trying to heal myself and trying to figure out my own trauma, trying to understand myself and my subconscious things that were driving me and that were really impacting my life. And as I started doing that, my spiritual gifts began to awaken, right? My intuition, sensing energies, feeling energies, and all of that is within all of us. And so I'm not special. I know I'm unique, but this is something that everyone has within them. And through this work, just really sitting back and trusting the divine to move through this, which is really all it is. It's not me. I'm not the healer. I'm just the space holder to allow this energy to come in. But I've put people in a meditative state to where they come into dialogue with their body, right? So that pain in their shoulder, those chronic gut issues, they are essentially now coming out of the mind and speaking directly to their body. And in doing that, when they begin to open that, memories start coming up. These moments of trauma start coming up. All of these things that they had didn't put two and two together, now they have complete clarity. When they do that, they get a total understanding. They come into peace with different things and they open these almost energetic reservoirs in the body that are storing that emotional energy from those charges. When they do that, when they hit these emotional reservoirs, so I like to say that we have an emotional tank. And I don't know why, but I picture it as like a big water tank, like a water heater. And we don't know what's happening in life, right? As children, they say, oh, children are so resilient. No, they don't. They just have no emotional maturity to understand how they feel. And we're not encouraged to feel our feelings and define them. And so everything goes into this emotional tank. And then it becomes too heavy and everything starts to fester. Then we take things like antidepressants, which is totally fine. No judgment there. It's necessary when needed. But those kinds of substances or addictions, right? Coping mechanisms, they seal that lid on that emotional tank. And energetically, all of that is kind of boiling and coming to the surface. So one more drop of emotional energy comes, maybe someone cuts you off in traffic and you explode. Energetically, it's just combustible. And so what happens is I bring people into dialogue with that body, and bubble by bubble, I like to say it's just like a little energy bubble that comes to a surface that you have to feel, that you have to process, and then it leaves the body, right? So it's almost like a really good cry. I personally I had terrible back pain, low back pain. I thought I was gonna be in a wheelchair by the time I was 40. I think I shared this with you a few weeks ago. And through this work, I healed the emotional energy that was being stored in my back and in my sacral chakra. And I walk perfectly fine now, no back pain whatsoever. I've had psoriasis since I was 19, which is a chronic autoimmune disease, and it's healed like 95%. And I've seen this work. A coworker of ours, Sarah, had this chronic pain in her shoulder. She addressed it, she felt it, it left, and I don't think she's had it since. So the body is essentially a vessel. It is our instrument. It houses our soul. It is the vehicle that our soul drives, right? So when we walk into something and maybe that stomach turns, that's the soul pulling the knobs in the body to tell you, hey, something's not right here, right? This deserves your attention. But when we don't have emotional awareness, all of that just gets buried in the body as the vessel. And so when we start doing this work, we're essentially unifying the body, the mind, and the spirit. We get out of the mind space, we reestablish the connection between mind and body, and then we begin to cleanse the body and do maintenance on the body by bringing that stuff up to the surface, which I think is what people really avoid doing because it's very painful. But then it leaves, it goes. So the work that I do helps people to go back into those traumas, which can be scary, but it reduces the charge because it reduces the emotional energy. So in that moment of impact, when you freeze up, when your system goes into, into haywire, that is softly, incrementally, we go back into those moments to reduce that charge through emotional release so that people can find a lot of peace.
Whenever you run into someone who doesn't believe, it's not, it's not some new thing. It's been around for, I don't even know how long now, like 30 years, maybe 40 years. And then traditional Chinese medicine, I mean, thousands of years. So, I mean, this is not new stuff. So when you run into someone who has maybe a reaction to it that's sort of cynical, or they don't believe, or they haven't done that research, how do you go about helping them to become comfortable with it, even if maybe they never come around to it?
So I like to meet people where they are. I'm super spiritual. I am super energetic and I love to mix it with the science, but it's not for everyone. And it can seem very woo for some people, right? And I work with vets who have PTSD and combat veterans, and we do this work. And I've been doing this for a few years, but I recently had one who I asked him, and he's into sound healing, he's getting acupuncture. And we were in our first session together, just kind of getting his story, getting to know him. And he was very resistant to this work anyway, right? He came with an attitude already. He didn't want to do virtual. He was going through a rough divorce. And I asked him, I was like, oh, tell me your experience. Have you done breath work? And he was like, I'm not going to talk about my breath. Like, what do you mean? what happens when you breathe, right? What happens when you breathe deeply? Does that make you feel anxious? And he just shut down the conversation totally. So I have to respect where someone is. If they're not open to it, they're just not open to it, and that's okay. It's just not in their field, right? Everyone's journey is their own. And let's say someone maybe is referred to me and they're a little hesitant. I'm just going to meet them where they're at, right? I don't really have a great answer for that.
That sounds like an answer that's very compassionate and
Mm.
is based off of a sense of like, okay, I'm not gonna push you
Oh, yeah.
to do something when you haven't had that opportunity to learn about the stuff at a more deeper level. Because I do think there is a visceral nature to spiritual work that comes with time and experience and a certain curiosity and creativity that's allowed. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from an energetic perspective too, if someone's closed off, they're closed off. They're not open energetically to receiving anything outside of them. With this work that I do, we have before we can start touching some of those trauma points, there has to be a know, like, and trust situation. We have to have safety in our space, in our relationship, in our communication before we can start diving deep into that. I'm sure you see that with EMDR too. Like someone off the street comes in, you're not just like, yeah, let's throw you into the throes of the trauma.
It's like 8 sessions down before I mean, they have to get to know me, right? And they have to get to know you.
Right, yeah, and they have to feel safe, and we implement different modalities such as, like, diaphragmatic breathing and different types of breath work to really regulate. We wanna regulate the nervous system before we open Pandora's box, because that can send someone into that can make your mental health feel like it's just hanging on by a thread, which I know well, right? So I never want to wish that on anyone.
When you're working with these combat veterans, what are some of the things that you are noticing happens as they start to get relief?
Mm. The biggest thing that I notice with these combat vets is they come and they don't talk about their time in war. Some of them do, but the real trauma happened in childhood. And I think that is a societal issue, and I think that's a really for me, and I'm deviating a little bit off of the question here, but their real stuff comes from childhood. It starts in childhood, and they join the military to create a better life for themselves. But there's already this trauma there, and I'd say about 95% of them. So there's a small that I've worked with, and there's a small percentage that had a good childhoods and still had significant military trauma, of course. But the childhood trauma makes them want to do anything they can to get their life together, to escape, to create something good. And then they're put into the military where they learn a lot of really great traits, of course. And they do, I'm very patriotic and I'm very thankful for our veterans, but they are manipulated to doing some really, really horrible things. And then they come back and, it's a game almost, right? It's mission
Mm.
focused, it's gotta be a game, it's gotta whatever. Well, then they come back and they are left with not only the PTSD, but the moral injury of their actions. And they are given, in order to deal with that, "Great, here, take this medication. Oh, that's making you tired? Well, here, take an upper. Oh, and that's working, here's Adderall and Klonopin and all of this cocktail." And just to numb them down from really sitting with that. So, in the program that I work with, Fort Freedom, it's a wonderful organization. Combat veterans are housed in an inpatient program. It's not a typical mental facility. They're literally in like a house, like an Airbnb, like a really beautiful home. They garden, they do physical training a few days a week, they do yoga. They're all shocked by yoga, by the way. They're like, "I
Mm.
don't wanna do yoga. This is bull." And they do yoga, and they're like, "What is yoga? It's amazing." But they're given these holistic healing modalities. They're given the tools. What happens though, however, is when they leave out of this beautiful retreat, they're almost met with the devil that they left. And which is a great opportunity for them to implement the tools that they've learned. But because a lot of them, they lack community, right? Military, they need community, they need purpose. They are mission driven. And when they come back, they have none of that. And they are really a very significantly neglected demographic of our nation. So, hypervigilance of abusive families, of, families with addiction, of sexual abuse, of physical abuse, just of really hard lives. And that never was healed. And it was almost like a lack of, they put them into these situations to get their mind off of it, which then almost impacted the trauma on top of it, right? Doing really terrible things and then completely abandoned. So the sense of abandonment, this lack of community, this lack of purpose, with all of these layers of energetic trauma, of having to fight through everything. I mean, they're faced with almost impossible odds and no one understands. We can't understand as civilians what they've seen, what they've experienced, not only what they've done personally, but the things that they've witnessed in other countries that are just horrible.
We do live in a very privileged time where if you're not a part of being around that level of violence, you can't fathom, the sort of things you experience being so different. Like, I think there's a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, I think is the name of it. And it's the whole book is about the fact that now we live in a society where we're so protected from
Mm,
these horrible things. We don't have the guillotine anymore. We don't have stockades. People aren't being disemboweled in the streets in front of us when we're kids. But
mhm.
that used to happen in the 1500s, 1600s. It's not that long ago where basically the world was very, very violent, very different level of experiencing life. So I almost feel like people go back in time when they go into some of these spaces and have to experience the heaviness of a time period where things were more violent.
Mm. I love that, and I think all of that is wired very deeply into our system. I believe as a spiritualist that we have lived countless lifetimes, and I believe that not only ancestrally, but our soul carries the imprint of those times. And so, we can, when put in some odds, I'm sure we can all snap into almost an animalistic approach, right? That fight or flight response where there's almost an activation of going back into that.
Do you think of the work that you do as something that you are meant to do? And what does that mean to you?
Absolutely. This work is I didn't know where it was leading me, and I really still don't know exactly what's up ahead, but I know I'm meant to be right here. The way that everything unfolds, the way that the divine just puts things in my path, the way that different things activate in my system, the synchronicities of everything. It is so purposeful. It is yes, I am exactly where I need to be, and that is a gift. It's humbling. I mean, as you're saying that, like, this emotion is coming up. I can feel my heart burning because it is like, why me? Right? Why am I chosen to sit here and hold people in their deepest pains? And I I've had my own very colorful past, and which is why I went into this work, right? To address the things that have been plaguing me forever. And in doing that, it's like, oh, that was also a gift because now I can feel and empathize with others. And I may not have war experience, but I have my own experience that feels like war, right? And my own personal war and my own childhood trauma and, all the different kinds of abuse and all that stuff. But even that is a gift so that I'm able to hold people in their deepest and their darkest periods and just sit with them. I believe I am a light worker. And as a light worker, we are meant to go through our own darkness to find our own light so that we can turn around and hold others' hands while they walk through their own darkness and help them to find their own light. So this is purposeful work. This is service. I had a marketing business, a marketing agency, branding, website, and all that kind of stuff. And I rode that fence for a few years of doing marketing, which is just still great work. But I would go into a marketing meeting and then I'd go into a spiritual meeting. And it was like ripping me into two to where one day I was like, "Ugh, I have to shut the doors on this agency. This is not purposeful work for me. My job, my role, my presence is not here." And I didn't know how it was all going to unfold. I just had to shut the door and take the leap, and the universe has me, spirit has me, and the more that I lean into my devotion, the more that path unfolds, and eh, it is the greatest honor of my life to be able to just hold people in this space.
It sounds like you had to foster a lot of courageousness in your journey. And if you had to give others a sense of what that was like, how difficult was that for you to move away from the more maybe societally accepted version of your life?
Terrifying.
I can't imagine.
And it's almost like a practice what you preach, right? Like, I do feel like I'm in direct communication with the universe, and so all of these universal laws, right? And we could sit here and talk about energy, and we can talk about abundance, and we can talk about, the law of attraction and all of these principles, but are we doing it? And I feel like the universe is always like, "Okay, it's time to, like, implement. You have to do this work. You have to do it. You have to let go and trust and free fall to feel them catching me in order for me to tell others, like, you have to follow what lights your soul on fire, even if you don't understand it. Even if you are terrified, right? You feel like I said, I rode that fence, and riding that fence was a barbed wire fence. It tore me apart every single day. It tore me in two pieces every day until finally I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I preach to trust the universe. Okay, I have to just trust it. And it always has my back. So,
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. I was actually thinking about that this morning. I had a supervisor who is one of my favorite people on earth. I'm not knocking her. She's one of my favorite people I've ever had the privilege of meeting. But she told me one time, and I think about this often. She said, there's all these people out there who follow their dreams, but that you never hear the stories of the failures. You only hear the stories of the successes. And I was like, no, don't tell me that. But then I thought about it. I was like, well, wait, you hear the stories of the successes, but you often hear of the 50 failed attempts before the success. And I
uh
thought about that and like I reframed it this morning as like, wait. It's actually success stories involve failure.
mhm. Absolutely, and that's a part of the journey, right? The success is like the destination. The journey is where the magic happens. The journey is, if we look at like fairy tales or the hero any story that has the hero's journey, it's about the journey. It's not about, the fairy tale at the end of it. But so in speaking into trusting a little personal story, I had to shut the doors. I completely closed the doors. I ended my marriage, I ended my business. I had to do what was calling in my heart, what I was feeling. And I'm a single mom, and 1 month I was like 200 and something dollars short, and I was like, on my bills, on groceries, like how am I gonna do this? Okay, I don't know. Hands up, full trust. And I got a check in the mail for something that I had paid over, and it was literally like the exact amount that I needed to get by that month. And I was like, okay, like I hear you. I'm doing the work. I'm trusting, and yeah,
Isn't that wild when that happens?
like I am every day. My mind is blown away by this work. It's so beautiful. It's so wonderful, and again, it's so humbling.
Hmm. This is a very different episode from my other episodes because it has a large spiritual component that, we use words like the universe, we use words like the divine, source, things like that to describe these synchronicities. I was also thinking about what you said earlier about the being called to action as a light worker. And I always try to bring it back to like the psychology universe because it
Mhm.
helps some folks who are more in the psychology universe. But I think of Jungian background, which is the wounded healer. It's like I
Right.
have to go through my stuff as this archetype as a helper in order to be a good helper because if not I'm sitting at a sort of blocked level. I'm not fully my capable self because if someone comes in with something similar and I'm not done with dealing with that stuff, I won't be able to help them because I couldn't help myself yet. So going through that energy sort of transfer is a way to release so that you have more capacity to work with folks is what I'm hearing basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an energetic recognition, right? And at first in my practice, so I'm a spiritual coach and a life coach and an energy healer. And I would be going through something, right, in my own life, and then I'd get through it. And then the next 2 weeks, every client that came to see me was having almost like verbatim. And at first, I was like, am I projecting my stuff onto them? Right? Am I just projecting what I see? Am I? And so I had to sit with myself and it just kept happening. And it was like, okay, wait, no, that my trials and my tribulations, I see myself almost as like a research project, right? I am always growing. I'm always trying to uncover and understand. And it's too deep for most, right? My teenage son is like, Mom, I don't want to talk about anything deep right now. But it, it's, I can recognize, right? It's these energetic frequencies of abandonment or whatever, right? These themes that just continue to repeat and it's like, it's just I can't even really articulate it because it just boggles my mind of the synchronicities. The universe, the work that I do on myself, the universe then starts delivering people to me who are going through the same stories. It's just so wild. It's amazing.
Well, I have the same experiences with EMDR, and it's very bizarre, and I love the bizarreness of it. The
Yeah.
weirdness of the synchronicities are so helpful to the healing process.
Mhm.
We'll be doing work on this particular memory, and something in their world will come up at the time we're doing the work, and will help them to move through whatever they were stuck in. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, what's the likelihood of,
Yeah.
and that's really cool to see because, like, it's not always like that for everybody. Not everyone always gets that. But when it happens and it's beautiful. And if it doesn't happen, I like to think it's just not time yet for you to have that catalyst or that maybe there's a blockage for a reason. I don't know what.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, it's really cool when we start talking about the hidden layer of all this interconnectedness and how cool that we were talking about that earlier of just like how does this all, fit together and then it just comes together.
Yeah. This web, something that I read. Just to kinda go back to the web, this interconnectedness of energy and how we are really all so connected, and I believe from an energetic perspective, when something unlocks in me, it's because it's unlocking in the collective, which is why I start to see it in my clients as well. But I heard that did you watch that Fantastic Fungi documentary?
Yeah.
And the mycelium network that's underneath that helps the trees to communicate? I heard the same thing that technically we have a mycelium network that connects all of us. And we all have golden keys to helping others unlock their stuff as well. So when we feel it, when we unlock it, or someone helps us to unlock it, something comes into our field which helps us to unlock it. Then we can give out keys to help others unlock theirs as well.
If someone is able to connect with these things, those that are able to connect with these things, what makes them different from someone that's not experiencing these things or able to connect with it?
Mm. So I think it's a matter of sitting in thought, right? Because just as we were talking about, like, my secret garden experience as a child, right? I didn't realize that and people will say things to me, and I'll begin to think about it, like, have I had that experience? And I've never realized I've had that experience until I start to put the pieces together consciously. That's what it means to be conscious. You are consciously putting the pieces together. If you don't realize that you have had those experiences, you're just a little unconscious to the fact that you have had those experiences, right? So there was probably one time, if you think really hard, where you did witness a synchronicity, where you were dealing with someone and maybe you heard a quote or you heard something on the radio or someone said something, something came into your field and you were like, huh, that's weird, right? But you didn't put the two and two together. You didn't realize how interconnected everything is.
Yeah,
But
it's just a coincidence,
it's a
right?
coincidence, right? And if we look at the
Yeah.
word coincidence, it's actually coincide. We are coinciding with the energy of the universe, with the interconnectedness of all things. And as a spirit, I'm gonna get really spiritual here. What I love about spirituality is so religion is a set of rules, right? You have to come through me and follow these rules to get to something greater, whatever the words are. In spirituality, there are no rules. What feels best for you? What are your beliefs? What are the words that you want to use? What are the definitions that you want to use? And so from a spiritual perspective, like there is something greater, right? Regardless of what anyone's theological beliefs are, there's something greater. That we can't define. It's ineffable. And I like to call that the sacred or the divine or the universe or whatever. And the sacred is woven through all things, through every person. It is woven in the fabric of reality. It is the essence that makes the flowers bloom. It is the essence that makes the seasons change, right? And so, even if someone is not consciously aware that they are connected, I guarantee that there's a little moment where they're like, huh, that's weird. It's a coincidence, but it is a coincidence in terms that we are coinciding with the sacred that is woven through all things.
Do you know the podcast Diary of a CEO? Do you know that
No,
one?
I'm not familiar with that.
He's a very heady guy, but he it's a pretty great podcast, and his response to those who bring forward coincidence is that it would actually like probabilistically, he explains it. I don't know if he's being a skeptic as much as he's just playing devil's advocate. I don't think he is skeptical. But he heard somewhere, which is interesting, that statistically it would be even less likely that we wouldn't experience some level of coincidence. It would actually be more statistically improbable that we don't experience at some point a coincidence, because then that would show some sort of strangeness. It's like we're being blocked from coincidence. So, in his attitude of it, he explained it as like it's natural to have coincidences because statistically it's going to happen at some
Mm,
point. It's what you do with the coincidence. Is it a synchronicity or is it just something that happened? How do you take the meaning and act on it? And that was kind of his reasoning of like how much do you apply meaning to it or not? It's like our consciousness has the reins.
mm. And what I'm hearing, like, from an energetic perspective is when that moment of coincidence happens, it's a choice because 'cause we're given free will. You can either block yourself off from it and just go, "Eh," or you can recognize that energy, and I feel like the coincidence is almost an invitation to lean into the synchronicity, and I do feel like those synchronicities are kind of what help our path unfold. Right? We are cyclical beings. We're energetic beings. We're not meant to stay in the same place. We're meant to evolve. We're on this planet, this Mother Earth. We've got the seasons, right? And so, but people will stay in cycles. People really want the safety of this continued cycle, right? And it's almost like a coincidence is a tiny little moment that you can stop and possibly get out of the current cycle that you're in. Just a
Mm.
thought there.
Yeah, that's the gift of it is it could be an opportunity hidden and disguised as something banal.
Yeah. And I believe everything is an opportunity, right? Like my own path of just inner turmoil and external turmoil was a gift to help me relate to others.
Oh,
Everything is a
yeah.
gift.
I run into a lot of therapists who are trauma specialists, and their attitude is that is dangerous to put forward thoughts like that. And I wanted to give you a chance to express the other side of that.
Trauma, I think, is an opportunity. So let me just start off by saying it's hard, right? Everyone's trauma is their own trauma. There is, of course, there's trauma that's, a combat veteran's trauma is going to be different than, someone else's. But I don't believe that any gift is wrapped up in a nice gold package. I think it is wrapped up in the deep and dark and dirty. It is, again, those waves of ascension, of expansion and contraction. I believe that it is that point of contraction, right? To help you to go inward so that you can come deeper into self, right? That so you can address what happened. You can learn where your voice is. You can learn what your are. You can learn what your morals are. You can essentially it's an opportunity to choose something different for your own life, to stop those cycles of trauma in the family, right? I believe as an energetic person, they pass down to us. We know it's in our DNA, but also it manifests in our life. And, with like something like sexual abuse in children, that is passed down, right? And when does that cycle break energetically? And so I do think, and I'm being very, there's a lot of different trauma, so it's hard to go into each one individually, of course. But I think a trauma is an opportunity to end that cycle so that it doesn't move forward. It does not mean that it's beautiful, but I do believe it is a gift, right? Even something
Yeah.
like a narcissistic partner. I get a lot of because of my own history, I attract a lot of women who deal with narcissistic parents and partners. And I had told my best friend this. She was going through a narcissistic divorce. I said, he's a gift. He's a gift for you to find yourself. And that made her very angry, of course, understandably. And I'm like, he's not a Christmas present. He's not wrapped up in beautiful paper under a tree, something that you love. But it is an opportunity for you to really do some soul searching. What led you here? What pain brought you to this point? What would you do differently? How can you move forward differently? How can you find how can we go through the chakra system and heal all the emotions there to come better into balance so that you become a stronger person? So you become more of a pillar of strength than a wounded person, right?
That's such an elevated version of the reality that most people are in. Most people don't think that way, right? Like that's not we view it as, it's barbed wire bows with poison ivy wrapping paper. It's
Mhm.
not that comfortable. But what I'm hearing you say is it's still wrapping paper and it's still a bow,
Yeah,
even if it's those things, even if it's painful.
it is. And going through my own stuff, it's like, okay, what's the lesson here? I believe that we're here to evolve, that our soul is here to evolve. Our soul is the eternal part of ourselves. It is connected to whatever's greater than us. And we are here to evolve, right? We're not here to play the victim. We're here to learn what we're here to learn. And then essentially, we're here to help others do it too, right? I believe that what we go through also impacts the collective, our own collective, and also our greater collective. Again, I use myself, I guess, as a research project because it's like, okay, I'm going through the hardest period. What's the lesson here? What do I need to learn? What's my inner child saying? What are these parts of my psyche that are essentially frozen in time? What are these points of trauma that are frozen in time that are affecting me in the present and also affecting my child, affecting my family, my friends, my everyone in my sphere? How can I be the best version of myself? What can I learn about myself while going through this so that I can overcome this?
So for atheists, skeptics, and internet trolls that exist
Mhm.
out in our world, how would you how would you like to approach them?
Okay, here we go. Um, so I was born and raised Catholic. from New Orleans, and I was always that person that raised my hand in religion class and was like, "Okay, there's too many holes here." I would get a lot of, demerits. I'd have to sign the conduct book. I'd get written homework, etcetera, for for not connecting. And I would say that while I kind of, would speak I would talk the talk essentially, I could have a God conversation. I was a full-blown atheist. I didn't believe in a man on a throne with a beard who's passing down judgment and all of that. And then I got pregnant. And when got pregnant, I was like, "This is wild. Growing a human, like, I'm growing like, how is that even possible?" I still don't know. It still boggles my mind that there's something greater here. There's a greater force, and I admitted that to myself. I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in Jesus, and but there's something here that I can't define," right? And that's kinda where it put it. When I had my spiritual awakening, everything was about energy. And I was like, okay, well, energy's a thing. I can get on the bandwagon of energy, right? I could not say the word God. I couldn't say Jesus. I couldn't say a lot of different things. And I would say that I'm more of like an what is the word? Omnism. I don't even know the word. I just read it over like 2 days ago, of course, the synchronicity, where it's where you can see truths in all religions, right? There's a little bit of truth in all religions and cultures. And so for spirituality, though, it's what you make it. It doesn't matter the words that we use. There's something that connects all of us. There's something greater than us, right? What is animating this body? What's the voices or the voice or the voices that are communicating in the head? Like, what is that? We can't define that. We're sure we could sit and try, we can sit and talk about it, we can have a lot of conversation, and we can all have our own definitions. But spirituality is essentially your personal connection to something greater. The words that you use are your own. The rules that you have to connect to that are your own, right? So, and if someone just doesn't believe in any of it, hey, that's okay too. That's not on their journey. That's not on their path. I honor whatever is whatever someone's convictions are. That is their convictions. I believe that we all have our own truths, right? So you know how kids can grow up in a house, 2 siblings, and they both have a totally different experience. Because again, back to that game of our soul being here for evolution, your your path is your truth and it's your journey, and whatever's on that path, no one can tell you any different. Sure, they can tell you their perspective and their truth, and that's where arguments happen. Right? And so the more that I go through this life, I have my own truths of things that I have experienced that people who were there did not experience. How can we explain that? We can't. They're not wrong, I'm not wrong. We just all have different truths on our journey as we're playing this game of life. So, those are my thoughts there.
I think I'm going to leave it there today. I think that this was a very interesting, enlightening, different take on psychology, mental health work, things that really brought forward a different conversation that I really appreciated. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Yes. And if people want to reach out to you or connect with you so that they can experience some of this for themselves, what we talked about that you help those with, how can they best reach you?
Yep, they can go to my website, sanctuaryhealingcenter.org. I do in-person sessions and virtual sessions as well. So I do have clients all across the world, which is super exciting. But yeah, sanctuaryhealingcenter.org.
The Culture Therapist is created, voiced, and edited by R.C. Winters, a licensed professional counselor in the state of Louisiana. It is meant as a tool both in an educational as well as advertising capacity for therapists and those in the mental health field to let future clients, current clients, others in the field, and the general public onto their experiences and interests. If you would like to have a conversation with me such as this, where you clue in others as to what you're all about, you can reach me via email at theculturedtherapistpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, if you have questions or comments, that's a great way to reach me as well. If you thought today's topic, the interviewee, or our format is worth recognition, please follow our podcast, leave a like or a review, and/or please share it with any family, friend, colleague, or otherwise that you feel might get something out of this podcast. Your help in those ways is most appreciated. Until next time, may you continue to grow, may you continue to thrive, and may you continue to aspire. From The Cultured Therapist, I am R.C. Winters. Catch you next time.